All right, this is Daf Yomi in motion number 820. Today we're going to learn Daf Kuf in Metzia, and we're going to be speaking about HaMachlif para b'chamor v'yolda, someone who did chalipin with a para for a chamor, moishech one, and he's kind of the other one, and the other person will be kind of the other one, whatever it is, just by one person being moishech. Just by one person being moshech, the one, the other person will be kind of the other, wherever it is. That's chalipin, and then it gave birth. Then the para gave birth. The Mishnah starts on the top of Kuf Amid Aleph. Zavtei like a Mishnah, HaMachlif para b'chamor v'yolda. Someone who they did chalipin, and it was moshech, let's say the chamor, and the para gave birth. So was it before the person was moishech the chamor, and then that it gave birth, and then it would be the vlad would be the property of the baal hapara. But if it was after the person had been moishech the chamor, even if the para was still in the reshus of the baal hapara, the vlad would be owned by the person who originally owned the chamor.
There's a factor, time factor coming into it in that. How pregnant was the cow? I mean pregnant, but how close to birth?
I don't know.
Is she obviously going to give birth, or she was already ready?
Probably was obvious. Had a baby in its stomach, had a vlad in its stomach, and the question is when was the birth going to be? So the shaila is whose vlad it would be. So HaMachlif para b'chamor v'yolda v'chein. Similarly, so that's with no money. And the Rashi explains why are we talking about chalipin over here. We couldn't be talking about kesef, kinyan kesef, buying the par with kesef, because the Chachamim made a takana that kinyan kesef will not be chal until there's mashicha. It's because of Shema Yisrof Chita B'Aliyah. Because maybe a fire would break. The reason they were masakin that takana, that every kinyan kesef on metatlin has to have a mashicha, is because maybe if up deraisa you don't need it, the money would have been kinda. But if so, then let's say the person bought a barn full of wheat, and with money, now he owns it, and if there was, even while it's in the barn of the moicher, so if the fire would break out, the moicher wouldn't feel motivated to save it, because he knows it's not his and he's not going to suffer any loss. He already got his money for it. So they were masakin that chita won't be kaina until there's a mashicha on it. So that's why we wouldn't have ever had this suffix on the vlad, whose vlad it was, if we were dealing with money, because for sure, if there was anything was kaina already, it means there was a mashicha. So the person was moishech and would know when the vlad was born. So, but with chalipin, we can have that the person wouldn't know when the vlad is born, and that's why it's chalipin. But with this next case, v'chein hamoicher shifchoso v'yolda. So too, if somebody sold his shifcha kananis, and she gave birth. So this could have been talking about a case of mammon, because kanire that the chazal weren't misakin the mashicha by a shifcha, and the money alone would be enough to be kind of her. So as soon as money would be given over, it would be kind of, even if the shifcha was still in the reshus of the original owner of the moicher. And also there they found that she had given birth, and this is the suffix, whose vlad will it be? It'll depend on whether or not it was before or after the masira of the money. So the Gemara says, the two studying claim, Zeomer ad shalom macharti, so the moicher says that it gave birth before I sold it, so it's my vlad. The lokeach claims that the vlad was born after he had already bought it, and it's his, therefore. So the din is yachloku. That would be, this is mammon amoitel b'safik, because we don't know whose vlad it belongs to, and this would be sumchus. Mammon hamoitel b'safik cholkin yachloku. Even though they hear that these two claims are called Tainis Bari, because each one is claiming that he knows when the Vlad was born. The Moicher says, I know it was born before he sold the para, and the Lokeach knows that it was born after he bought. These are two Tainis Baris, but we're still saying Yachloku. More will go into that. How you low base Vadim in the case where he had two Vadim, Echad Gadol ve'Echad Katan, v'chein base Sadois. Echad Gadol Gdoila ve'Achas Ketana. He had two fields also. Either two Vadim, one was large and one was small, or two fields, one was big and one was small. The person was buying one of them is Halokeach Omer, that he had bought the big one. Omer Gadol Lekachti, I bought the large one, the big one. Vahola, the Moicher says, oh, you didn't, money was already given. He says, you didn't buy the large one, you bought the small one. Vahola Omer, the other one here claims he doesn't know. Any of that. He's not sure. The Lokeach is Bari, the Moicher is Shema, and the Bari Odif, the Lokeach will get the larger Evid or larger field. Zocha begadol, the Lokeach will get the bigger Evid or the bigger field. Hamoicher Omer, the opposite case. Hamoicher Omer Katin Macharti, I sold the small Evid or the small field. Vahola Omer, Any of that. The Lokeach says he's not sure which one he bought. So Eno Ela Katin, he's only going to get the small one. The Moicher was Bari. His claim will be Mekuyim. He will get what he was claiming. Another case, Zeomer Gadol, Zeomer Katan. So each one was Bari here, that with what they were buying. The Moicher is Bari, that is the small field was sold, and the Lokeach is Bari in his Taina that he bought the big field or the big Evid. Yeshova HaMoicher. So then here the Moicher is the one that has to make a Shvuah, and he will then take. Then he would only give the cut in the small. So here, why is the more later we'll talk about it, why is the Moicher making the Shvuah, not the Lokeach? He's talking about it that every time a Shvuah is mentioned in the Torah, it's in order to potter a person from Tashlumim, from having to pay. Here, the only one that would really be potter would be the Moicher, because he's claiming, I only sold you a small Evid or a small field. The other one's claiming a large. So for him to, by him to have to pay the larger one, that would be like paying more than he says he was selling. So if he makes a shvuah, and therefore he won't have to pay, it'll get him out of paying the larger one, and he'll only have to give the smaller one. Yeshova HaMoicher. Oh, here it's the Mishnah continues. Yeshova HaMoicher shehakatan mochar, right? And he'll only have to give the smaller one, because this will be a case where the he's making he's Yeshova and he's potter milah shalom.
In the last Mishnah and this Mishnah, we're saying the same thing. We're saying that it presents the opinion of Sumchus, who is a Yachid, who we don't follow. I thought that that one of the principles that Rav followed when he redacted this is that if it was something that was not followed, that it would become a brisa, not a Mishnah. That a Mishnah would be only the ones that are followed. Why is he including?
Could be the brises are those that were somehow mishubeshta, like they were not clear. That this was definitely, maybe the people bringing it down were not 100% sure that this is the way they heard it. Mm-hmm. But the brises were, the Mishnayot maybe were more like limudim, that they were 100% sure that this is how they heard it. So anything that they were 100% about, maybe that became a Mishnah. It didn't really depend on whether or not we went to halacha according to that or not. It was just like what was good, solid information. So in this case, the Moicher, here we see that they're both bari. They're making a claim. One says he sold only the smaller Evid, and the other one says the field, and the other one says he was buying the larger one. A shvuah is being made. There's two claims of bari, and the shvuah is being made, and the Moicher is then able to give over the smaller Evid or field and doesn't have to give the larger one. If the Zeh Omer Eini Yodea, Zeh Omer Eini Yodea, what about in the case where both of them don't know, aren't sure about, they're both Shema, about what they were buying, whether it was the big one or the small one, Yachloku. So here in the last case, they're both Shema, and then we were Yachloku. The case before, they were both Bari, and there wasn't a Yachloku, there was a Shvuah, and it puttered the Moicha from having to give the larger. And in the ratio of the Mishnah we had where they were both Bari, they both knew when the Vlad was born, and they were still Yachloku. More we'll go into all of these, why, the differences. Amai, Yachloku. Why do we see in the ratio that we're splitting it? That was the case where there was Bari v'Bari, and we're Yachloku. There's another alternative. Why don't we just licheze b'reshus deman kaima lehevi idach hamotzi mechaver olavarayim. All you have to do is, like, we're dealing here with a vlad. True. Just wherever it's sitting is not going to really determine whose it is, because by we're dealing with chalipin, even if it's sitting in let's say the bala paras reshus, it doesn't mean it's the bala paras, but at least that's where it physically is. So just look at where it is physically, and then whoever is claiming it, whoever is trying to take it out of that physical reshus should have to bring the raya that it's his. And if he can't, then we'll let the person where it physically is, whose reshus it physically is in, we'll give it to him. Why don't we say it like that? That would be somewhat like the Chachamim of Sumchus, that Amotzi Mechaber Olav Arai. It either, with the Chachamim, the way we say Amotzi Mechaber Olav Arai is usually either we go after which reshus it's physically in, or who was the original owner of a certain thing. When we say Amotzi Mechaber Olav, we either look where it is now, and then we require the other person who wants to take it out of that reshus to bring a raya, or we look at who originally owned it, and we make the other person have to bring the raya if he was trying to take it away from that original person. So here they're looking at where it physically is, and they're saying, instead of splitting it, since they're both bari, why aren't we going like the Rabbanim and requiring that the Amotzi Mechaver Olav Raya? So Mor says, all right. So Omar Rabbi Chia bar Avin, Omar Shmuel. The reason why we're not doing that is because it's not in any one person's reshus. The Omedes ba'agam. This para that was being bought by being Moshech the Chamor, it happened to not be in anyone's reshus. It was in the wild. It was in the agam. And so therefore, we couldn't say the one who wants to take it out of the other person's reshus should bring the raya. So therefore, the Mishnah said Yachloku. In the case of the Shifcha Nami, the Kaima Besimta. She was in the Besimta, and Rashi says, opposite where we are in the Gemara, Besimta, that was a Keren Zavis, that was on the corner, Hasmucha L'Rachba, that was close to the main way. Moichrin Bo Behemus Ba'avadim, that's where they used to sell. It wouldn't be right in the middle of the street, but it would be on the side where they used to sell animals in a body. And so it wasn't either of their reshus, and that's why we couldn't say, and that's why maybe our Mishnah said, hello. The Gemara says, well, what about the other way? We usually do Hamotzi Mechaber Olav Arai. We look at who was the original Mori Kama, who was the original owner. Why aren't we saying like that? It says, why don't we look at who originally did and require the other person to bring the raya instead of saying Yachloku? So what about Imor de Omar Sumchus? Maybe when Sumchus says his din of Yachloku, it's B'Shema V'Shema. B'Bari V'Bari Mi Omar. Who says that he will still say his din B'Bari V'Bari, like in our Mishnah? And for the Gemara, Omar Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Yes, it's true. Omar Sumchus. Afilu B'Bari V'Bari. Sumchus said his din even B'Bari V'Bari, which is the case in the ratio of our Mishnah, and therefore Sumchus, we can still say that is Sumchus said is the Tan of our Mishnah. Rava Omar Leolam Ki Omar Sumchas Shema B'Shema. Now, Rava is cholok on Rabba Bar Rav Huna and says the Sumchas only said his din of Yachloku in the case of Shema B'Shema, because then it's a suffix in the eyes of the litigants as well as of Beis Din. About Bari B'Bari Lo Omar, but if it was Bari B'Bari, they aren't B'Safik B'Chal, only the Beis Din is B'Safik. Then it's not. He wouldn't say his din of Yachloku in that case. And we would maybe say a Motzi Mechaver Labaraya. Betani, so Rava said no, he would not say Yachloku. But so then how do we understand, according to Rava, how do we understand our Mishnah as being according to Sumchas? So he changes the gears of our Mishnah, and when we said in our Mishnah, Ze Omer Ad Shelo Mocharti, that it gave birth, Ze Omer Mishalokachti, that it gave birth, Yachloku, according to Rava, he add a word here, the Ze Omer Shema Ad Shelo Mocharti, the Ze Omer Shema Mishalokachti, Yachloku. So therefore, according to Rava, since Sumchas only says his din of Yachloku with a Shema V'Shema, so he added that word. And that's what the Gemara says. V'toni ze omer Shema ad shalom acharti v'ze omer Shema mishalokachti. So the Daf Kuf Amud Aleph, right in the middle of the Amud, first word on the line is Shalo. It's the last word on the line. It says Tanan Ze Omer Eini Yodea. So the Seifa, the Mishnah. Ze Omer Eini Yodea. Ze Omer Eini Yodea. Yachloku. So that's Shema B'Shema, Yachloku, that. So this is now going to. Okay, so the Gemara asks Bishlema L'Rava. So that. This will work out according to Rava, the fact that we saw in the Reisha, we were dealing with Shema B'Shema, and the Sefer is dealing with another Shema B'Shema, because it's all the same idea in the Mishnah. The Rava, with the Sefer Shema B'Shema, Reisha Nami Shema B'Shema, the way Rava wanted to, he changed the gears of the Mishnah, and it was Shema Ad Shalom Acharti. So that's the way the Mishnah is working. So they're both the same case, Shema V'Shema. El Rabba Barav Huna that said that Sumchas also says Yachloku when both claims are Bari V'Bari, that would be the Reisha, and the Sefer would be when both of them are Shema V'Shema. His question is going to be, the Mishnah doesn't make sense, because we wouldn't need the Sefer where they were both Shema V'Shema, because if Sumchas says Yachloku when the Bari V'Bari, and we have a case like that in the Mishnah, so Kol Shechein, he would say, if he's saying that Bari V'Bari is Mammon Amotel B'Safek, when it's, meaning just in the eyes of Beis Din it's a suffix, but for the two litigants it's not a suffix because both of them are clear. So that's Mammon Amotel B'Safek. So for sure when both of the two litigants are also not clear, then that would be Mammon Amotel B'Safek, and there would be Yachlok. We wouldn't have needed the Seifa. That was a case of Shema B'Shema. That would be the problem with the Mahalach of Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Rabba Bar Rav Huna to Omar Im. Yes, Omar Sumchas Efil B'Bari B'Bari. So Hashta Bari B'Bari Omar Yachlokus. So now, if in the case of Bari B'Bari, the din Sumchas says is din of Yachloku. Shema B'Shema Miboya. Would we need the Seifa, which is the case of Shema B'Shema? We wouldn't have needed it. So it doesn't seem to be going according to the Mahalach of Rabba Bar Rav Huna. The Mishnah doesn't seem to be going that way. The Gemara says that won't be a problem on Rabba Bar Rav Huna's Mahalach, and that which he said in Sumchas that he says Yachloku even with Bari V'Bari. Even Shumha lo area, that's not going to be a problem. Why not? Tana Seifa L'Gilui Reisha. The only reason we have the Seifa that says Shema B'Shema, where we wouldn't have needed it, according to Rabba Bar Rav Huna's Pshat, is to teach us what the is to be megala to us what the case in the Reisha is really talking about. Because if we wouldn't have had the case in the Seifa, and all we had was the case of the Reisha, Ze Omer Ad Shelo Machati, I would think that it's talking about Shema b'Shema. I would think that there's supposed to be a Shema in there. And that, but when it would come to Bari v'Bari, I would think that I would interpret the Reisha as being Shema b'Shema the way Rava did. But I would think that when there's Bari v'Bari, that Sumchus doesn't hold the Yachloku. But by having a Shema b'Shema case in the Seifa, then I know, according to Rabba Bar Rav Huna, that the Reisha's case will not be a Shema b'Shema case because the Mishnah wouldn't put two similar cases in. So therefore, the Reisha must be a case of Bari v'Bari, and therefore we can see that Sumchus also holds of Yachloku by Bari v'Bari. That's what he wants to say. It's Tana Seifa Ligalui Reisha. Shalot Toma, that you shouldn't say Reisha Shema v'Shema like Rava said. You shouldn't say that the Reisha is Shema v'Shema and to make the diuk about Bari v'Bari low. Make the diuk that if it was Bari v'Bari, Sumchus wouldn't say his din of Yachloku. Therefore, that works also according to Rabbi Rav Huna. You have the Seifa of the Seifa. Tana Seifa Shema v'Shema. So therefore, we learn the Seifa, which is Shema v'Shema. That's the end. Now it's Megal the Reisha. He continues. Mechlal the Reisha Bari v'Bari, and that teaches us that the Reisha must have been Bari v'Bari, right? And even in the case of Reisha being Bari v'Bari, we still saw Yachloku. Yachloku. So that's why Rabbi Rav Huna would understand the Mishnah, and why we wouldn't be bothered by the fact that we wouldn't need the case in the Seifa, which was Shema v'Shema, because it's there to be Gala what the Reisha is really talking about.
Don't we have in the Seifa both Bari Bari and Shema Shema?
Yeah, but not in the case of Yachloku. The other Bari Bari we have in the Seifa is talking about where he's Yeshova, he makes a Shavua.
Right, Bari Bari makes a Shavua. Right. And Shema Shema they divide.
Right, but we're dealing with the Yachloku, which is Sumchus's din, and so we're only focusing on the Yachloku of the Seifa and the Yachloku of the Reisha.
But don't we know from the Bari Bari in the first part of the Seifa that Sumchus holds that you don't divide when it's Bari Bari? Because it says you don't divide.
And because we have a case in the Reisha that says they're Bari and they're dividing it, so we don't really know how to interpret that case of the Reisha.
The Reisha says Bari
and Yachloku, because we had in the Reisha of the Mishnah that it said Ze Omer Ad Shlo Machati. The Moich was definite that the Vlad was born before he had sold his para. He was definite. Ze Omer Mishlo Lokachti. The Vlad was definitely born after I bought it. Yachloku. So therefore, we're focusing on those two at this point.
So we have a stira to the large one and the small one, where it says
somewhat. After the Gemara will explain it, because there we see in the Seifa we have Bari v'Bari and they're Yeshova and they're not splitting it, whereas in the Reisha it was Bari v'Bari and they were splitting it. It has to be.
We have to get to that.
Right. It's none. We learn in our Mishnah. Ze Omer Gadol v'Ze Omer Katan. Each one was definite that what they were, the Lokeach was definite that what he was buying was the larger Eved or larger field, and the Moicher was definite that he was selling the smaller Eved or the smaller field. When the din was Ishova HaMoicher, the Moicher had to make a Shvua Shekotan Mocha, that he was only selling the small one, and then he would only have to give the small one. So when it says, according to that part of the Mishnah, that'll work out well according to Rava. Bishlam with Rava, that would work out according to Rava, that learns that Sumchus's din of Yachloku only applies with Shema v'Shema, but not with Bari v'Bari. And so that's why in this case, when the Meicha was claiming was Bari and the Lokeach was Bari, they weren't able to say Yachloku. They had to. The Meicha had to make a Shvua because it was Bari v'Bari. That works out well according to Rava. And because Rava interpreted the Reisha as being a case of Shema b'Shema also, so that wasn't a problem with Rava either. To Omar, and more explaining it, to Omar, ki Omar Sumchus Shema b'Shema. About Bari v'Bari, lo Omar, but Sumchus didn't say Bari v'Bari. So that's why there was a Shavua in that Seifa when they were Bari v'Bari. The Gemara explains, Mishum hachi yishava. El Rabba bar Rav Huna, but according to Rabba bar Rav Huna, that he says that Sumchus says is din of Yachloku, even with, in the case of Bari v'Bari, to Omar, yes, Omar Sumchus, afilu Bari v'Bari. So then, Amay Yeshova Meicher. Why should the Meicher be make a shvua? You should just split it because it's Mammon and Motel B'Safek. Each one's saying that they has a Bari claim, two opposite claims. One saying he was buying this, he was selling the small, and the other one says he was buying the big one. Why should we make a shvua? Let them split it. Yachloku, according to Rabba bar Rav Huna, that Sumchus holds of Yachloku Afilu with Bari v'Bari. And for the Gemara, now, because we could say that Sumchus agrees that there are times when you don't say Yachloku. When would that be? And that he would agree, Sumchus would agree with the Rabbanan that you Amotzi Mechaber Olav Araya. Or when, or not necessarily Amotzi Mechaber Olav Araya, but that there would have to be a Shvua. When there's a Shvua D'Oraisa, so then he would agree that a shvua has to be made, and we wouldn't split it. Why? Because when there's a shvua d'oraisa, meaning that there has to be a shvua, because the Torah says in this situation you're supposed to be making a shvua, then even though it's mammon amotel b'safek, but if the Torah is telling us to make a shvua, and a shvua is going to have to be made, sumchas there can't split. Because if sumchas would split, then it wouldn't be shaveh, it wouldn't be an even split. Even if he would, in this case, require the shvua and then split, he couldn't do that because that would mean that let's say here, the moicher would be getting half, but only by way of a shvua, and the lokech would be getting half without having to make a shvua. That wouldn't be shaveh, that wouldn't be even. So therefore, you could never split because in the case where one person is going to be making a shvua. So Sumchus agrees in the case where there's a shvua d'oraisa where you're going to have to make a shvua that you can't split. The ika shvua d'oraisa kidabi'inan l'meimar l'kama, like we'll talk about later on. There, and that would be why there's a shvua going on, even though according to Rabba bar Rav Huna, the whole Mishnah could be Sumchus, and that seifa where there's a shvua is not a problem because Sumchus agrees that in cases like that where there's a shvua d'oraisa, that there's a shvua. Why is there a shvua d'oraisa? The Gemara is going to speak about it, but the Gemara is going to speak that here we see each one's claiming that the Moicher is saying he's selling the small one, and then Lokech is saying he's selling the big one. For it to be a shvua d'oraisa, there has to be a motive mixus. Where's the motive mixus? So the Gemara later is going to say that this Mishnah is going to come to Rabban Gamliel. The motive, there's two ways of making a motive mixus. One is that the person who's being moideh, partially moideh, is being moideh partially to what was being claimed against him. This person is claiming, you owe me 100 units of wheat. He can partially, so he would have to be moideh that he owes 50 portions of wheat. That's motive mixus. It's called motive mixus mimin hataina. In the same thing, a commodity that's being claimed on that's what the hodah. The hodah is in the same object, in the same type of commodity, wheat. But if someone's claiming like a wheat and the other person will admit to barley, that's not. There are those that it's machlokas. There are those that say that that's not motive by mixus because he's not being moideh to any part of what is being claimed against him. But Rabban Gamliel says no, you don't need it to be, the hodah to be exactly in what's being claimed against him, as long as there's some type of admittance, even if it has nothing to do with, like, let's say wheat is claimed from a person and the person admits to barley. According to Rabban Gamliel, that's also motive of mixus because he's admitting to something. So this would be according to the Gemara is going to come out that this Mishnah is going to come to Rabban Gamliel. So then, even though that the Lokech is claiming a big Evid, and the Meicher is saying, I only sold you a small Evid, those are two different people. So what's the admittance of the small Evid is not part of the claim of a big Evid, because it's a different person. So there's no real motive mixes. Where's the motive mixes? Because we go like Rabban Gamliel, that he's admitting to something, a small, that's called motive mixes. And therefore, that's...
The big one's like wheat and the small one's like barley.
Right. And that's why there's a chiyuv d'oraisa here, because there's motive mixes. Right. And then once there's a chiyuv shvua, according to Sumchus, he agrees that you have to make a shvua and there's no yachloku. Gemara says, right there, the Mishnah says, Hayu lo, beis avadim, in the case where he had two avadim. Echad gadol ve'echad katan v'chulu. Right. And that was the case we just mentioned also. So the Gemara says, why is there a shvua over here? Where are we seeing, like, we just tried to explain it, but the Gemara has a problem with it. It's like, Amai Yeshova, why is there a chiyuv shvua in a case like that? It's not fitting all the criteria of when a shvua becomes chayiv. Masha tanu lo hoidelo, v'masha hoidelo lo tanu. Here we don't have any motive mixes, because what's being claimed from him he's not admitting to what is being claimed from him. And what he's claiming from him, he's not admitting to. What he's being claimed from him, he's not admitting to. And what he's admitting to is not being claimed from him. So there's no admittance, partial admittance to what's being claimed from him. That's one problem. Another problem is va'od heilechu. Another problem is that he's admitting to, even in what he's admitting, is the small slave. That slave is in his house. It's in his reshus of the meicher, let's say, of the meicher. And anytime there's physically the object which the person is admitting to that belongs to the other person, if it's physically in the reshus of the person who is admitting that he owes it to the other person, then that's halech. It's as though it's already in the reshus of the lokeach. And therefore, if that's already considered in the reshus of the lokeach, the small evid, that's not under discussion, therefore, because it's already given over. So what's left is the difference between the small evid and the big evid, which the meicher is denying. That's called kofar kol. And in the case of a kofar kol, there's no shavua. So there's another problem where we have halech, because the evid, small evid, is in the reshus as a live person in the reshus of the meicher. So then, the meicher is the one selling the small, claiming to have sold the small evid. So there's no even chiyuv of a shvu, because it's only considered a kofar kol. And the third problem is va'od ein nishboyin al avadim. There's no shvu on avadim, because the avadim are considered like karka, and there's no shvu on karka, which is nechasim sheyesh lam achrayis. Gemara explains, Omar Rav. So then, what is our Mishnah? How does our Mishnah understand it? There's a chiyuv shvua in that case. Omar Rav b'tanoi damei. No, he wasn't asking for him to give over a large evid, and the moicha wasn't ready to give over a small evid. The lokeach had already tried to buy this large evid. He gave over the money, and the moicha wasn't coming through with the evid. So the lokeach wanted to back out of the deal. He just wanted his money back. And when he's asking for his money back, he wants the value of a big evid. And the meicher was saying, no, I agree to you. I owe you the value of a small evid. So we're only talking about money here. And so if the meicher will agree that he owes him the value of a small evid, that's motive mixus, because we're only talking about money. And he's admitting that he owes him part of the money that is being claimed from him. So Demei Evid, the Gemara says, Demei Evid Gadol, Demei Evid Katan is really what the claim is, which there is a motive mixus. Demei Soda Gedola, Demei Soda Katana. So there, according to Rav, that takes care of all the problems. The problem is we have the motive mixus. We don't have halech anymore, because we're not talking about a physical evid that is there. We're talking about money. And we're not talking about avadim here, so there is a shvur by mammon. But Shmuel has a different way of explaining why we have this Shvuah. Where's the Chiyuv Shvuah coming from in this Mishnah? Shmuel Omar B'tainai Kasus Eved. Now we're not talking really about an Eved. We're talking about the clothing of an Eved. So the Lokeach wants to trying to buy large clothing of an Eved, for large Eved, and the Merchant says, I was selling you small clothing. Bitano Kasus Eved Gadol Kasus Eved Cotton. Oimre Soda Gedoyla, Oimre Soda Ketana. Or in the case of the Soda, it wasn't really talking about the Soda either. It was talking about the sheaves, the stalks of a big field, or the amount of stalks of a small field. One says, so if that's what Kondah Shmuel, we have a problem. If what was being bought was the Ksus, again, what he's asking for is big clothing, and the Meichel said, I agree to you, I owe you small clothing. Again, that's what's being asked from him is not being admitted to. So then there's no more to mix us. So then again, why should there be a Shavuot? There's no more to mix us. Ksus, mashatanu lo hoidalo, masha hoidalo lo tanu. And for the Gemara, so what are we dealing with? Kidoma rapopo. Bidlaifo. Hochanami bidlaifu. That is like talking like both clothing that are under discussion are from the same roll of material, maybe it seems. And he's saying, you're supposed to be giving me enough material for a big baguette, and the Moicha says, no, I was only supposed to give you enough material for the small baguette. So it's not two different, it is miminataina. It's more mixes of what was being claimed from him. So that, according to Shmuel, is why there's a Shvuah, and it was talking about material, and that's why it's not Navadim. We do make Shvuahs on material, and it was motive mixas. And there's no Halech because I guess it's all that could also maybe be Halech, but there are those unfortunately that ask on that, why isn't it Halech? But they don't seem to be bothered. They have answers why that's not Halech. One asks if that's Mahal that we're saying in Shmuel, according to Shmuel, because Rav was okay, but Shmuel, this is the way we're answering Shmuel. So we have a kasha on this Mahala. Kashile l'Rav Oshaya. Yidik Sus Katani, Eved Katani. How can you tell me that we're talking about here clothing of the Eved for a big Eved, or clothing for a small Eved? The Mishnah said that he was trying to buy an Eved, not clothing. So how can we just, Shmuel, go and reinterpret the Mishnah that we're talking about the clothing, which takes care of the problems of not making a shvuah on a budding, and that we didn't have more mixes. And Omar Ravi Oshaya, what are we talking about? Kagon Shetanu Eved b'Chesusai V'Soda be'Omreya. Talking about that it was an Eved with his clothing he was supposed to be buying, or a field with its stalks. So, and therefore, we understand why we were speaking about an Eved. And we were, the understanding here is that true, you can't make a shvuah for an Eved, but because we was buying the clothing also, that's metatl, and that you could require a shvuah from. So once he made a shvuah for the clothing, he was able to be megalgal a shvuah onto the Eved. And that's why it said Yeshua in the Mocha has to make a shvuah that he was just trying to sell the small Eved. Morris still has a problem with that mahalach. Bechati kasus. Still, you're making the shvuah on the metapolin, and then you'll be megalgal a shvuah over to the Eved. Oh, we're just going through the same steps that we said above. Oh, so basically you're focusing on the ksus, but how can you focus on the ksus and require a shavua? The ksus is two different, there's no more mixes, because we're talking about two different types of clothing. Masha tonu lo hoidalo, v'masha hoidalo lo tanu. And we bring Reb Papa's answer again. Omar Reb Papa, b'laifo. That we're talking about like material for a big Evid or material for a small Evid. So therefore it is motive mixes. So that would be Shmuel's Mahalach. And it was an Evid with its clothing. And that's why he's able to make where the shvu is coming for the clothing, and we're magagal the shvu onto the Evid. Because the clothing is nechasim she'ein lehem achrayas. There is a shvu on nechasim she'ein lehem achrayas. That ein lehem achrayas means that no malva would give a loan based on metatlin, because metatlin can always be stuck under the hidden and might not show up when he needs it. But land is nechasim she'yesh lehem achrayas, because people would rely on it and give loans based on it, because you can't hide land. But a shvu can be made on nechasim she'ein lehem achrayas, and then u'megagal that shvu onto the karka. The Gemara asks, according to this, kasha l'Rav Sheshis. What's the kasha? Zogi kinata l'ashma'inan. So what are you trying to tell me? That we're take the shvu on the metatlin and we'll megagal it onto the karka. That's what we're learning from our Mishnah according to Shmuel. We wouldn't need to be learning that, because we have a whole Mishnah that teaches us that. Tanina, we learn in a Mishnah. So also in Kedushin, Zogikin hanechasim she'ein le'en achrayas, es hanechasim she'yesh le'en achrayas, lishava aleihem. That the nechasim that don't have achrayas, the tatlin, when they would have a chiv demand to make a shvu for them, they can demand a shvu on nechasim she'yesh le'en achrayas, onto the karka. We learned it already in a Mishnah. Why would we have to be learning that here in this Mishnah? So then, that's the kasha of learning. So we're stuck here in learning Shmuel. Why do we have that shavua? And the Omar Rav Sheshis would explain how many Rebbe Meir he. That our Mishnah could be going according to Rebbe Meir, because Rebbe Meir learns that on Avadim, which we're talking about, there is a shvuah. Here, at this point, it seems like we wouldn't need Shmuel anymore. We don't need the begadim at this point. This could be explanation of Shmuel, but you wouldn't need to come out to the begadim. The avadim themselves, according to Rebbe Meir, you can make a shvuah on avadim, because avadim are like metatlim because they are movable. They walk. Mani Rebbe Meir, the Omar. Avda k'metaltalin dami. They're like metaltalin. So according to Rebbe Meir, you could make a shvu on avadim by itself. Gemara is bothered. Again, you don't have motive mixus, because if we're looking at the avadim as metaltalin, you have one big ebed and one small ebed. It's not the same. The claim is on a big ebed, and the moicher is saying, I owe you a small ebed. What's being claimed is not being admitted to. V'chati masha tanu lo hoydelo, v'masha hoydelo lo tanu. And for the Gemara, the Mishnah is also going according to Rabban Gamliel that says you don't need minataina, minataina. As long as you're motive to something, there's some haidah that's enough motive to call it motive mixas. You don't need motive mixas ataina. You just need motive mixas. The masha hoidelo lo tanu, sobalo, and for the Gemara, sobalo ki Rabban Gamliel. Tanan tanu chitim b'hoidah soirim poter. This is a brisa. Tanakama says that if someone claims chitim and the person admits to soirim, he's potter from a shul, because you don't have motor mixes hataina. You don't have motor mixes memin hataina. So there's no chiyuv shvur, but Rabban Gamliel mechayiv. Rabban Gamliel says you do, because he doesn't require memin hataina. Therefore, that could be our Mishnah, that we weren't bothered by the fact that there was some admittance to the small eved, that was enough motor mixes to mechayiv the shvur. According to this, the Mishnah would be going according to Rebbe Meir and according to Rebbe Gamliel, and that's why there's a shvuah. Gemara was bothered. Kati helechu. How can you say we have here an eved, a little eved, that he did admit to, and that, however, and you're requiring a shvuah. However, it's like helech, because the eved is in the reshus of the meicher, and he admitted that he has to give it. Therefore, it's like it's given already. Therefore, his whole, what is he really doing? He's like kol for a call on the difference between the small eved and the big eved. That's kofar kol. There's no shvur on kofar kol, only on motive mixes. Kasha, and for the Gemara, Omar Rava, it's not a kasha. What are you talking about? Avda de kotel liyadeh. You saw that the chofar bar resifim v'maros. No, true. As the Moicher, it said that he owes a small eved, that could have been motive, that could have been halech. But when they went to look and to see the eved, they saw that the hand was cut off the eved.
If the seller claims that he sold the small one,
Right.
why would he cut off the hand of the one that he says he sold? I can see he cut off the hand if he thinks it's his. He says, okay, well, I cut off his hand because I was punishing him for something. But if he says I sold this slave, then he knows he can't cut off his hand. He knows it's not his. It doesn't make sense.
Because he's admitting that he cut it off. So anyway, it could be it got cut off in a machine, so that he didn't do it on purpose. But the point is that this is not halech because the claim he admitted to a complete eved. The claim was on a complete gadol. He admitted to a shalom katan, eved katan, and an eved that's not shalom, that has his hand cut off. That won't be halech. That won't be as though it was handed over already to the toveya, and therefore it's still considered in the reshus of the moicher, and it's not halech, and so therefore it's only on halech that you can't make a shvur for, and so that it could still be making a shvur.
In the first place, we learned once before that the body of the slave is not owned by the.
That's only for an eved ivri, but here we're dealing with an eved kanani.
So anyway, he's saying it's an accident.
I don't know if you wouldn't do it.
But your answer is not going to fit for the field. It says the seller dug pits, ditches, or caverns.
So that's the same thing.
By accident? He dug ditches by accident?
Or it could be that he did it wrong. He wasn't allowed to do it, but he did it. Like he had it in his reshus, because he or when they were going to make the sale, he thought he was buying a complete field, but the complete field maybe never was really complete. Maybe it was dug out. So anyway, also with the field, it's not halech because that's not considered given over, something that you never was not really part of the deal. That's not given over when the person admitted to a complete. When the person admitted to a complete field, it's not halech to give over. It's not considered in the reshus of the lokeach a field that's not complete, that's dug up and has holes in it. More says, so therefore, we have the Mishnah going to Rabbi Meir that shvur can be said on avadim, and it's going to Rabbi Gamliel that you don't need memin ataina, so that we do have motive and mixes, and Rava said there's no halech here because it ended up that the field or the eved was not complete the way the moicher stated it was. We really see opposite sheet in Rabbi Meir. I think it's because the moicher said, I agreed to you that I owe you a small eved, meaning a small good eved, and he doesn't have a small good eved.
If he's the one that dug the pits, then he knows the pits are there.
Okay, right now there's pits there. If he says, I agree to you, I owe you a small field.
With no pits.
Right, with no pits.
The pits are there. Why would you ever say I agree?
Because he agrees. He owes him a small field with no pits, because that's what they made a deal on at one point. And then he, in the meantime, dug pits. He won't be considered halech because it won't go over, because it's not what he's admitting to. It's when the person admits that I owe you this thing and I have this thing physically, then it's considered it's already gone over to the other person. But if you're admitting to is he doesn't have, then it's not considered it went over. And if it's dug up and ruined, he doesn't have what he's admitting to. So therefore, it's not considered it's already out of his shoes.